Walk into any supermarket in this country and spend 30 seconds in the cleaning aisle. Count the products. 18, 22, sometimes 30. Spray bottles with color-coded labels. Blue for glass, green for counters, yellow for drains, orange for mold. A different bottle for every surface in your home, every category of grime, every specific problem. Each one solving a problem so narrowly defined that you need the next bottle to solve the one it missed. The average American household carries 11 different cleaning products. The average spend on household cleaning supplies in 2023 was over $600 per family. Now stand in an Amish farmhouse kitchen. One jar, clear liquid, costs less than $2 a gallon. That's the whole cleaning shelf. The first time I saw this, I assumed it was water. Then I noticed the smell. Faint, clean, faintly metallic. Not harsh. More like the air after lightning. A neighbor who'd grown up old order Mennonite told me what it was. We use it for everything, she said. Always have. She was talking about 3% hydrogen peroxide. The brown bottle. The one that's been sitting in pharmacy corners since the 1920s, usually shelved between the bandages and the cotton balls, usually priced at 89 cents, usually ignored. I started asking questions. In agricultural communities across Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana, in communities that have used essentially the same household systems for 150 years, hydrogen peroxide occupies a position in the home that is difficult to describe to a modern American. It isn't just a first aid item. It isn't just a wound treatment. It is a full-spectrum household chemical. A single compound solution to what we now address with 11 separate products. That gap between what the Amish have always known and what most households currently spend is worth examining slowly, because the chemistry here is real, and the history is longer than the brown bottle. Hydrogen peroxide, chemical formula H2O2, was first synthesized in 1818 by French chemist Louis-Jacques Thenard, but its practical household use didn't arrive until the late 19th century, when pharmacists began selling dilute solutions as antiseptics. By the 1910s and 1920s, medical guides and farm almanacs were describing applications far beyond wound care. A 1923 agricultural bulletin from the Ohio State Extension Service, still findable in university archives, lists hydrogen peroxide as appropriate for food surface sanitation, water purification in remote settings, treatment of minor livestock infections, and preservation of produced freshness. 14 practical applications in a single 2-page circular. These weren't secrets. They were common knowledge in agricultural communities. Somewhere between 1940 and 1970, that common knowledge became uncommon. I wanted to understand why. To understand why this compound does so many things, you need to understand what it actually is. Hydrogen peroxide is water with an extra oxygen atom. H2O with one more O attached. That extra oxygen is unstable. It wants to leave. And when it does, when that oxygen releases, it doesn't just evaporate gently. It oxidizes. It breaks chemical bonds. It disrupts cell walls in bacteria, fungi, and mold. It bleaches stains by oxidizing the color compounds. It reacts with organic matter at a molecular level. When you see hydrogen peroxide fizzing on a wound, what you're watching is that released oxygen colliding with the enzyme catalase, which is present in blood and tissue. The fizz is rapid oxygen release. The same reaction that makes it useful on a wound makes it useful on a countertop, in a garden, in a water supply, in a produce drawer. It doesn't discriminate between biological threats. It simply oxidizes what it contacts, and then it breaks down into plain water and oxygen gas. No residue, no toxic film, no compound left on your cutting board that you later consume with your food. The molecular simplicity is the point. Compare this to the active ingredients in a common kitchen disinfectant spray, benzalkonium chloride, for instance, or quaternary ammonium compounds. These are effective, but they leave a residue. They require rinsing on food contact surfaces. They are not safe to ingest, even in trace amounts, and most labels carry explicit warnings about contact with skin, eyes, and food. Hydrogen peroxide at 3% concentration is safe enough that it has been used as an oral rinse. That's not a claim. It's on the label of products sold in pharmacies for exactly that purpose. One compound, Used safely inside the body. Used safely on food surfaces. Used safely in the garden. That asymmetry between the simplicity of hydrogen peroxide and the complexity of what replaced it is worth sitting with. Let's go through what Amish households and early 20th century agricultural guides actually documented. 1. Wound and cut disinfection. The oldest use. Still valid. The fizzing action mechanically removes debris from wounds while the oxidation kills anaerobic bacteria, the kind that thrive in the low-oxygen environment of a cut. Modern wound care guidelines have refined this. Hydrogen peroxide is no longer recommended for deep wounds, as it can slow healing in tissue. But for surface cuts, scrapes, and minor infections, it remains effective and cheap. 2. Surface disinfection in kitchens. Spray undiluted 3% peroxide on cutting boards, countertops, and food prep surfaces. Wait 60 seconds. Wipe. The oxidation kills Salmonella, E. coli, and Listeria on contact. A 2000 study from Virginia Polytechnic Institute found that spraying surfaces first with white vinegar and then with hydrogen peroxide was more effective at killing pathogens than either compound alone, or than many commercial disinfectants. That study was published. It is in the public record. It did not meaningfully change what grocery stores sell. 3. Vegetable wash. Fill a spray bottle with 3% peroxide. Spray produce. Let sit for 3 minutes. Rinse. This removes surface pesticide residues, bacteria, and mold spores that water alone cannot reach. Agricultural communities were doing this version of food safety before the phrase food safety existed as a regulatory category. 4. Refrigerator cleaning and deodorization. Wipe down refrigerator interiors with undiluted 3% peroxide. The oxidation removes mold, kills bacteria responsible for odors, and leaves no chemical residue. Unlike bleach solutions, there is no concern about residual fumes contacting food. 5. Mold and mildew treatment. Spray on bathroom tile grout, caulk lines, and shower walls. Let sit 10 to 15 minutes. Scrub. The peroxide penetrates porous surfaces more effectively than surface-level disinfectants because it carries oxygen into the material itself. Old farmhouse bathrooms without ventilation systems were kept relatively mold-free with exactly this approach. 6. Laundry brightening and stain treatment. Add 1 cup of 3% hydrogen peroxide to a load of white laundry instead of chlorine bleach. It brightens without the harsh chemical degradation that bleach causes to fabric fibers over time. For stains, apply directly, wait 5 minutes, then launder normally. Blood stains, in particular, respond very well to hydrogen peroxide. The same catalase reaction that causes fizzing in wounds accelerates the breakdown of blood proteins in fabric. 7. Oral rinse for gum health. Dilute 1 part 3% peroxide with 2 parts water. Rinse for 30 seconds. Spit. Do not swallow in quantity. This has been standard dental hygiene advice. It kills anaerobic bacteria responsible for gum inflammation and bad breath. Amish communities without easy access to dental clinics relied heavily on simple antimicrobial rinses. Their rates of gum disease in documented agricultural health surveys were not higher than the general population, which is a striking fact given the access disparity. Toothbrush disinfection. Soak toothbrushes in undiluted 3% peroxide between uses. A single toothbrush after 1 week of use has been shown in clinical microbiology studies to harbor significant bacterial colonies. Peroxide storage kills those bacteria without degrading the brush. 9. Foot soak for fungal conditions. Add 2 cups of 3% peroxide to a basin of warm water. Soak feet for 20 minutes. The oxidative environment is inhospitable to dermatophyte fungi, the organisms responsible for athlete's foot. This doesn't work overnight. Consistent treatment over 2 to 4 weeks shows results comparable to over-the-counter antifungal applications in mild cases. 10. Garden and seedling treatment. Dilute 1 tablespoon of 3% peroxide per cup of water. Water seedlings or spray garden soil. The extra oxygen in the solution promotes aerobic microbial activity in soil, the beneficial kind, while suppressing anaerobic rot bacteria and fungal pathogens around root systems. USDA agricultural bulletins from the 1940s referenced dilute peroxide soil treatments particularly for damp rot prevention in cold frames and seed starting trays. 11. Fruit and vegetable preservation. Lightly misting produce with diluted peroxide before refrigeration extends shelf life by suppressing the surface mold and bacteria that begin the decomposition process. Amish households without refrigeration for much of the year used this approach on root vegetables and soft fruits stored in spring houses and cellars. 12. Mirror and glass cleaning. Spray undiluted 3% peroxide on glass surfaces. Wipe with a lint-free cloth. It leaves no streaks, no chemical smell, and no residue. The oxidative properties cut through grease films that plain water misses. Old farmhouse mirrors, some of them still clear and usable after a century, were maintained with exactly this approach. 13. Ear canal health. A few drops of diluted peroxide in the ear canal can help soften and loosen accumulated earwax and provide mild antimicrobial action in the outer ear canal. This is documented in otolaryngology literature as a home approach for wax management. Amish medicine chests consistently included peroxide for this application, documented in oral histories collected by the Mennonite Heritage Center. 14. Humidifier sanitation. Add a cup of 3% peroxide to humidifier water. This suppresses mold and bacterial growth inside the tank, a well-documented indoor air quality problem with modern ultrasonic humidifiers. The peroxide breaks down before the mist reaches the room, leaving only water vapor. 15. Meat and poultry surface treatment. Rinse raw chicken, pork, or beef with a dilute solution of peroxide before cooking. The oxidative wash reduces surface bacterial load, specifically the pathogens most responsible for foodborne illness, without affecting flavor or texture. This was common practice in farm kitchens without refrigerated meat storage. It is still documented in food science literature as an effective surface decontamination step. 1 compound, 15 documented applications. Cost: under $2 per gallon at 3% concentration. Now consider the economic structure of what replaced it. The household cleaning products industry in the United States generates over $30 billion annually. That number requires product proliferation to sustain. A market built on a single, cheap, multipurpose compound is a market with a ceiling. A market built on segmented specialty products, each one solving a narrowly defined problem, has very different economics. This isn't a conspiracy. It's a business logic. A product formulated to clean only glass, priced at $4 for 16 ounces, creates a dependency that a $2 gallon of peroxide does not. Each new problem, mold, odor, grease, bacteria, becomes an opportunity for a new SKU on a new shelf. The agricultural extension bulletins stopped circulating in the 1950s and 1960s. Land-grant universities shifted research priorities toward commercial agriculture and industrial food systems. The practical household chemistry that farm families had passed down through almanacs and county bulletins. That knowledge had no institutional sponsor to keep teaching it. There was no profit in continuing to teach it. That's not villainous. It's structural. It's the normal behavior of systems oriented toward revenue rather than sufficiency. The result is that most Americans under 50 have never been told that the brown bottle in the first aid aisle, the one that has been there their entire lives, can clean their kitchen, treat their garden, sanitize their produce, and brighten their laundry. Here is how to actually build what Amish households maintain: a single compound cleaning and household health system based on 3% hydrogen peroxide. First, the sourcing. Standard 3% hydrogen peroxide is available at any pharmacy for approximately 89 cents to $1.50 for a 16-ounce bottle. In bulk, available through wholesale suppliers, farm co-ops, and several online retailers. 1 gallon of food-grade 3% peroxide costs between $8 and $12. Food grade matters if you plan to use it on produce or as an oral rinse. Standard pharmacy grade is fine for surfaces, laundry, and garden applications. Your setup: 1 dedicated spray bottle, clearly labeled, dark-colored or opaque, since peroxide degrades with light exposure. Use it for kitchen surfaces, produce washing, glass, and bathroom mold. 1 glass mason jar for toothbrush storage. Fill it a third of the way. Replace the solution weekly. 1 small dropper bottle for the ear and oral rinse applications. Dilute to roughly 1 part peroxide, 2 parts water. 1 watering can or garden sprayer for the soil and seedling application. The ratio is 1 tablespoon of 3% peroxide per cup of water. More concentrated than this and you risk disrupting beneficial soil bacteria. Storage. Keep bottles in a cool, dark cabinet. Hydrogen peroxide breaks down into water and oxygen over time, faster in heat and light. A properly stored bottle maintains effective concentration for 6 months to a year. You'll know it's expired when it stops fizzing on contact with organic matter. This system does not replace everything. For heavily soiled grease buildup, a degreasing agent with surfactant chemistry works faster. For drain maintenance, enzymatic cleaners address root causes that peroxide does not reach. For truly deep mold remediation, structural mold in walls, for instance, professional treatment is necessary. What peroxide replaces is the routine maintenance layer. The daily disinfection, the weekly surface cleaning, the ongoing sanitation of a functional household. That is where the 11-product shelf was built, and that is where a single brown bottle quietly suffices. Total annual cost for this system, approximately $30 to $45, depending on household size. The average household currently spends over $600. There is something particular about this knowledge about practical household chemistry that sits differently than, say, forgotten carpentry techniques or lost seed varieties. It's intimate. It's daily. It's the stuff of kitchens and medicine cabinets and the spaces where a family's ordinary health is either maintained or neglected. And it was passed down, not in textbooks, in almanacs, in agricultural circulars, in the things a grandmother told a daughter while they worked together in a kitchen that didn't have 30 products under the sink. It was practical intelligence that lived in the hands and the habits. What's striking about Amish communities isn't that they discovered something exotic. It's that they never stopped using what they already had. The industrial cleaning revolution of the post-war decades, all that fragmentation and specialization, passed through their communities without taking root. They had no particular reason to adopt a new bottle for every problem. And so a knowledge that was once completely ordinary, known to farm wives in Ohio, to settlement homesteaders in Kansas, to families everywhere that didn't have a hardware store within easy distance. That knowledge persisted in one community while it faded from almost everywhere else. Your grandmother probably knew most of these uses. Her mother almost certainly knew all of them. The brown bottle was a household staple when a household staple meant something that actually did many things. The gap between what was once known and what is now commonly known, that gap is the interesting thing. Not who created it, but what it costs us to not close it. I don't think anyone designed this forgetting. The post-war American economy was genuinely trying to make life easier. Specialized products were marketed as improvements, and in certain narrow ways they were. A formula optimized specifically for glass or specifically for toilets may marginally outperform a general-purpose solution in that exact application. But there is a kind of efficiency and a kind of cost that those calculations didn't account for. The efficiency of one compound that does 15 things. The cost of 11 products to replace it. The cognitive load of maintaining 11 different categories of a problem that previous generations handled with one. And more than the money, there is the dependency. Once you stop knowing how to maintain a home with simple chemistry, you become dependent on the supply chain that provides complex chemistry. You become dependent on the store being stocked, on the formula being consistent, on the price being manageable. Amish households have a word, or at least an orientation, for this. The avoidance of unnecessary dependency on systems outside the household. It isn't anti-technology. It is a very deliberate accounting for what you actually need. Standing in that farmhouse kitchen, looking at the mason jar on the counter, it was hard not to feel the weight of the comparison. Not as outrage, more like recognition, like remembering something you didn't know you'd forgotten. Hydrogen peroxide is one entry point into a much larger question. Because the Amish relationship to household chemistry doesn't stop there. The same communities that maintained their peroxide protocols also preserved a working knowledge of fermented plant washes, a category of mild antimicrobial solution that predates synthetic chemistry by centuries, documented in 18th century Pennsylvania German farming manuals that most agricultural historians have never read. And alongside that, a system for extending food storage without refrigeration that uses nothing more complex than salt, acid, and would smoke in ratios that were once taught in every land-grant university home economics program before those programs were restructured in the 1970s. And the passive cooling architectures, root cellars, spring houses, bank barns, that maintained ambient temperatures 10 to 15 degrees lower than outside air without any mechanical system at all, using nothing but topography, stone, and the thermodynamic properties of the earth itself. The thread runs deeper than one brown bottle. What the Amish preserved was not a collection of quaint habits. It was an integrated system of practical intelligence, tested over generations, refined under real constraints, maintained because it worked. And most of it is still in the public record, still in the extension bulletins, still in the university archives, still waiting to be remembered.